All right, well, are religion and spirituality the same? Am I pronouncing that right, though? Spirituality.
Sure. Yeah. Seems
Well,
like,
don't say sure, because then someone in the comments is going to be like, no. But,
yeah. Spirituality. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
all right.
Um, it seems like they should be, but I think that there are some distinctives. You can be religious without being spiritual, and you can be spiritual without being religious, because religion kind of implies that you are following a set of rules or a type of style of worship or format in terms of the way that you live. But being spiritual, for a lot of people, it's like, well, I'm kind of open.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm kind of open to what's going on around and what's taking place, but they aren't necessarily following a set format. Of following, what the church is saying. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some distinctives, and so I think there's a lot of people who are spiritual, and I think there's a number of people who may be religious who, I don't know how spiritual they are in terms of, are they alive inside, or are they just kind of going through the motions and just doing the thing? So yeah, I think there's some distinctives there, and I think that a lot of people. Matter of fact, I was just reading a study from a sociologist, Rodney Stark, and he was talking about how that in America, America is really much more spiritual or more God conscious than what a lot of studies portray. And so, but whether that translates into people in the seats on a Sunday morning is not necessarily the case.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be spiritual without being religious, and you can be religious without being really, if you're just going to church and nothing's changing, then
Yeah.
I mean, God transforms us. God changes us. God makes us more like Him. I mean, from our tradition, from our perspective, as Christians, is that God's constantly changing us. So, yeah, I don't know what you're Gen Z. What do you think? You've got a lot of friends who are.
Yeah.
What are they spiritual? Or are they religious?
I think a lot of my friends definitely are more in the. Well, some of them are. I have some friends who are just kind of hardy atheist, and then I have some friends who are more kind of agnostic leaning, and yeah, a little bit. They definitely believe in spiritual things and stuff like that, but not a whole lot of direction.
Are they hard atheists because they definitely don't think that there is a God, or is it just
Yeah.
because they haven't been exposed to?
I have some
Spiritual
friends
things.
who just don't. They don't believe that there's a God, and that's just from kind of their life experiences and stuff like that.
Do you think
But
that's because of their parents, because of a bad incident, or what do you think is behind that?
I think just having questions that didn't get answered,
Okay.
and then not really seeking out answers to questions.
Okay. Do you think that they were hurt because of something, and so that's why they are so disappointed?
I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I think Frank Turek asked that great question about how that, if I could give you good information to prove that Christianity is true, would you become a Christian? And if they say, well, yeah, well then that's an intellect issue. That's they just needed more information. But if they say, well, no, I don't care what you tell me, I'm not going to believe, well, then that's a heart issue, and that's more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, and going back to the social studies question, or the are we religious or spiritual? I think this idea is that we need to understand where people are coming from, if they're atheist or they're agnostic, or if they're or into scientism. Again, one of the things that people have talked about is that, well, I believe in science. I don't need God. But that's really a belief system in and of itself, thinking that science has all the answers. Science has become your God. Well, science in and of itself is a methodology, not an ideology. But when you make it an ideology, a belief, then you are reading into the scientific method things that it doesn't prove, or that it
Yeah.
doesn't provide answers for,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, interesting.
Well, I think it's interesting because science is the study of, and maybe this comes from some of Frank Turek's stuff, but it's the study of the physical world. It's
Yeah.
not the study of, like, God's beyond the physical
Right,
world. How do you
right.
use science to prove
Right.
something that's beyond the physical world? But
Right. And you only have to listen to people like, Neil deGrasse Tyson, is that his name?
Yeah.
I always mess up his...
Don't ask me. I thought that for the longest time that he was a wrestler. And someone was like, nope, he's not. But it sounds like a wrestling name. Neil deGrasse Tyson, something you'd expect to see, like Jake Paul fighting him or something.
Okay. Well, I don't know. We might pay to see that. I don't know. That's interesting. But, you listen to someone like him and others talk about physics or other scientific thoughts or concepts,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see it doesn't take long before you see that they're extrapolating. They're speculating.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard information that they're talking about. They presume that this is what's going to be the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not hard science, that's faith.
Yeah.
That's belief. We think this is what's going to be
Mm-hmm.
out there. We are, our data seems to indicate this, but it's not hard factual information, which is what the scientific method is, something that you can prove over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's one of the challenges with evolution and other things, in the past, is that they have ideas, they have guesses, they have some, fossils and things along those lines, but they don't have historical evidence to back it up necessarily. They're extrapolating from the evidence that they have. And so at some point, a lot of science is faith.
Mm-hmm.
We think this is what it is. And then when you start challenging them on that, they get a little defensive because you're challenging their faith.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, facts are like, well, this, you do this, A plus B equals C. Well, that's just there. And every time you do A plus B, it equals C.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much scientific fact. But when you start challenging people on presumptions, they get defensive. And we do that too in our faith.
Mm-hmm.
So, but understanding where people are coming from helps you. Okay, I get why you're being offended. I get why you're pushing back. I understand. So yeah.
Get the perspective.
Yeah. So don't take it too personal.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps you be able to hopefully build bridges for conversation and understanding with each other. And even though I may not agree, at least I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think the more we understand each other, the better off we are. And then there are some subjects that you just don't talk about because it's too personally, you're so personally attached to it that you can't have a valid conversation. You can't have a reasonable conversation because people get really hot under the collar.
Yeah.
I know some people, going back to the political thing, that if you take an opposite perspective than they do, they just get really angry quickly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, at that point you can't have a reasonable conversation because
they're not open to it.
Well, it's just not pleasant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sit here and have you be unpleasant with me for 20 minutes or however long that might go. So that goes back to challenging someone's faith in an ideology. It's a political ideology, but it's an ideology that they've invested in. And if you prove it being wrong, or if you prove it as being not good, then they take it personally because that means that they've been wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm taking out of that is
all right.
You're challenging Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, well, no, you said that he needs to start wrestling. Or maybe wrestling Jake Paul. I don't know. That's what you said. So. That would be interesting pay-per-view.
That would be, yeah. Yeah. Probably pay to see that.